and welcome to another episode with the VDA podcast. Before we begin with Sisterhood in Community with BRAVA, I would love to ask, as we're here on YouTube, for you to go ahead and like this video, subscribe so you're notified for new podcast interview videos here on this platform. And if you want to listen to the audio version of my interviews, I also am on Spotify, and then you can go ahead and leave a rating there as well. The more likes, the more subscriptions, the more likely it is for these interviews to be shared with other people that are on this platform, for more people to hear these messages, these soul-led conversations, spirit-led conversations that are needed, right? So you can also share this with any friends that you have that you feel might benefit from this podcast. But either way, if you give it a thumbs up and you subscribe, that would help a lot, and that only takes a few seconds from your end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into Sisterhood in Community with BRAVA, which is here in Orlando, Florida. Welcome to the podcast, y'all. In this episode, we have the co-facilitators of the platform I Am BRAVA, where Norelys and Dalmaris have book club meetings, a podcast, and women empowerment-driven events for their community. And even though they always deflect their success on everyone who's a part of the I Am BRAVA community, which to an extent I totally get because it's such a beautiful family, they are the wonderful women who are the heartbeat of the community itself. So thank you both for hopping on here with me, and welcome to the podcast.
Woo! My God. I mean, I can't. I can listen to that all day. It was amazing. It was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so kind. It was so sweet. It touched mi corazoncito.
Of course, always, any day. Let me know.
We don't have our soundboard hooked up, so we probably will be doing the sound effects.
Oh my God, is that what we
That's
did?
what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
We're so used to the sound effects that we had to do it. Boom, 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 boom.
You can insert sound effects whenever you want. That's totally fine. And you can answer this individually or separately, but what is the I Am BRAVA community to y'all? For the people that are listening to this that are not aware of your beautiful book club.
Sure. BRAVA is it's a sisterhood, right? We are on the journey of having the raw conversations, having authentic connections, diving into books that are going to develop us as, the women that we're trying to be, as creatives, as goddesses, as community members, and just really being able to explore topics that you normally would in another setting.
Yeah. I think it's also a community that's just ever evolving from the moment it started. And even with the podcast now, it's also taking shape into something else. But I was going to say, in regards to even what we talk about, I think it's easy too, because Dalma and I already have a comfort level between each other. So it's cool. I feel like every girl always has this thing with whenever they talk to their best friend, they're like, oh my God, we could be a show. This could be a show. This right here, And it's I think it's been such a cool experience that all these conversations that she and I have had, now we have it on a podcast, and then having people kind of interact with that. And so that's why it's also evolving, because we've even been surprised at the people who are listening to us outside of women, just the men who've gotten into it and actually like it and enjoy it. Yeah. So it's been very interesting to see also how uncomfortable people are about talking about so many things.
You think so?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk to us about the uncomfortability.
A little bit of what?
The uncomfortability.
Yes. And that people are surprised at how comfortable. That's a feedback that I feel like I've gotten a lot from specifically the podcast, where, that people are like, I'm so glad that you brought this up, or you said this, or you said that. And it's oh, I didn't realize that that's something that would be not openly discussed,
Yeah, because for me, I feel like nothing is off limits. I'm going to talk about whatever.
Yes, for sure. And then for me, it's I'm with her most of the time. And then I flip up. So I'm that's my boundary. That's what we're stopping. And this makes me feel like I'm the crazy one. Like she'll be like, really? It's not that serious, is it? You know, and you're just like, oh, maybe it's not. I don't know. But it's been interesting to find those boundaries and even within the group and just seeing everybody else's comfort level and stuff. The in real life, like book club, like I can't believe I said in real life, but it's true. In real life, like book club meets and the dynamic there, and also just the dynamic too in the podcast. So it's just been evolving and yeah, it's been really fun.
Yes, because you all have the podcast, and the podcast is based on the books that you are reading.
Of the books that we covered in book club.
In season 1, we only had time. We went really deep into the book that we were reading because it took us half a year to finish the book, which was Anatomy of the Spirit by Dr. Carolyn Miss. And she is going through each of the chakras. So we went into each chakra, each episode. But moving forward in the second season, we want to cover more books. And some of the books aren't as dense as that Anatomy of the Spirit was. So we'll be able to cover more in the second season.
We were like, we're going to just focus on the books. And we've noticed that throughout the conversations that we've had in each chapter, and there were so many things to talk about, and us just getting comfortable talking too, that in season 2, we definitely want to explore a little bit more of an open format where it's not just the books. So it doesn't have to be so dense like Anatomy of the Spirit was, where there was so much to cover each chapter that we had to break it down like that.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to mix it up a little bit more and do like conversations, more engagement with the community, which a lot of people like doing that too, with the voice notes that people would send us and stuff and us sharing it. And also like interviews and stuff like that. So
because the in-person book clubs, it's a little limiting, right? We have to find a location, who's willing to host. So we want to move over to Patreon, start a community there, get a membership going, and get real community involvement going on.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. I want to ask you all about the start of this book club community because, like you call it, it's a sisterhood, it's a safe space where people can come in and have these types of conversations that you could have with people or you could not have with people, and it's just opening up for you a whole new world of possibilities. But how did that even get started? Like, where was the seed planted? What was the seed?
So again, book club, right? We started with Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Estes. I always say if you haven't read it, every woman needs to read it. It is the Bible for women.
Yes, it is.
Right? It's going to take you on a soul journey. It's a self-discovery journey.
Carol G, I'm pretty sure that book inspired those 2 albums of hers.
Oh, Carol G read it.
Yeah.
Jada Pinkett, she read it. That's actually how, because I co-founded it with Odali Tineo, founder of OT Wellness. She's a life coach. She's a yoga instructor. So me and her ran it together. And she had found the book through recommendation of Jada Pinkett. And it's funny because she just came out with the book. And Odali's reading it and she's quoting Women Who Run with the Wolves all throughout the book. Even the way that she like breaks it down, it's based kind of off of the book. So we had a lot of women join in for that. It started off with meeting once a month, and we covered each chapter because each chapter is like, they go in, right? One chapter is about the inner child, another one's about the shadow, another one's about intuition. And then with each meeting, we would bring some type of dynamic, right? So like maybe we would bring a Reiki healing. We had the pleasure of having you come on when we were doing Anatomy of the Spirit. And
oh yeah, that's true. Yes. Yes. I was like, why do I remember you in one of our book?
Because I went to one.
Yeah. So and then the second book, which is Anatomy of the Spirit, you led us through a visualization, a meditation. You had the whole drumming experience. It was awesome. So that's what we try to do in each meeting. Bring something that's tied to whatever it is that we're talking about. And so it took us like a year and a half to finish Women Who Run with the Wolves because, it was a chapter 1 month. But throughout the whole experience, like it brought everybody together. It brought conversations together. I feel like the women that were involved in that first unit, everyone's doing something. Everyone's like in their own path, chasing the dream, like doing the work. So it was, Odali says we were going to group therapy together for like a year and a half. That's what it turned into. And now we have the group therapy on the podcast.
Just like I said, and going back, I mean, not to be so redundant, but going back to like how BRAVA has evolved, even that first book, the group was very different from then when Anatomy of the Spirit came. That was a different group of women that got close. And it was like almost like the next batch. And like, not that everybody isn't still involved, but it's funny how each book it's resonated with somebody different, and so therefore the community also changes. And yeah.
Yeah, so since the next season we're moving into the body, I hope to get a lot of thoughts.
What type of pun was that?
That's where I would have done the little bit. Wah, wah, wah. Like I wouldn't.
I want a lot of freaks coming up in this movie.
Woo, girl, we'll be talking about a lot of things. And we gotta get in that body. Oh, they get to
Yes.
do that now.
Oh, man. We were thinking about somebody suggested maybe doing a topless episode.
Maybe you see some nipple tassels. You know what? We didn't ask you. Is this explicit or is this clean? How are you?
Oh, it's just explicit, baby. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. Just checking. Yeah, nipple tassels. Yeah, for sure. Maybe.
Oh, you actually have
Yeah.
them with you.
You better stop. We're not doing all that. You see what I mean? This is what I
Okay,
deal with.
the audio is explicit, the video is not. I don't want to be kicked off of YouTube.
Don't worry, Ashley, because I'm right there with you, girl. Okay, you see what I mean? This one is the edge of the cliff all the time, and I'm always like, no, we're not going.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're on Patreon, it could be like a top tier membership, you know?
Might as well go to OnlyFans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And look how excited she gets. I can't.
That's what I've been wanting this whole time.
I tell you about my OnlyFans venture. I already have a name picked out. I have like a logo already in my mind. Everyone's giving me their ideas, like how what to upsell. I'm gonna let you in on that.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know how that works out for you. Wow, talking about like explicit videos totally threw off my train of thought of where I was gonna go next with this. But regardless, you talked about the beginning of this and how Women Who Run with the Wolves brought like a certain vibe, a certain group of people, and everybody in there's like out doing their thing. And it's funny because I feel like that book is meant to be read in community. Because when I read that book, I couldn't do it on my own. And the only way I was able to sit down and read the whole thing was by me also having my own little like book club. But it was more like, we didn't call it a book club. It was just more like, let's just hold each other accountable. So then I was meeting with 3 other women on a bi-weekly basis. So we got it done like a little bit sooner, but then towards the end we fell off. And I don't know why I'm talking about this. Let me move on. Point is,
I'm in it.
Listen, I was gonna say I caught on the tail end of the book. That's when I moved here, they were already finishing up the book. So I got the book and the minute I started reading, I was like, the fuck am I reading? What is this? I don't understand it. Like I was so lost. And then you start questioning your intelligence because you're like, what? This is like, it's not like you gotta take your time with it. And so then I was going to book club and then I would understand I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But since I caught it at the tail end, I haven't read the whole book. So my experience with Women Who Run with the Wolves hasn't been as transformative as it was for her. But Anatomy of the Spirit was for me because when we started that's when I was already part of book club and I knew some of the girls and all that stuff. So, we started that. So that was my experience with Anatomy of the Spirit. But if you guys ever want to revisit it, I mean,
I definitely want to do it. I want to do it on the Patreon platform, and Odali's thinking about doing it with me. Coming back on it. So, we'll see. Because the first time that we decided to read the book and we actually got together, we were coming into the meeting talking about, yo, this book is hard as shit. We need to pick a different one. There's no way we're gonna get through it. And then just talking about the book a little bit, and we had some of us had just only read the intro and talking about what was in the intro. That alone was enough to get the conversations going. Like we noticed that we were going into some deep, heavy conversations, and it was giving us an opportunity to relate to one another, right? There's so much that we had in common. So that's when we were like, no, we need to do this book because we're gonna help each other understand the book and everybody's coming with their own life experience. So everyone has a different perception of it, a different interpretation, and it all beautifully creates like this thing where everyone takes exactly what they need from it.
I will say the book definitely brings out a lot of deep conversations. Yeah, for sure. And just experience as a woman, right? The things that we just never thought that you could say aloud, or you were allowed to think, or you were allowed to feel. Embracing the wild side right?
Undomesticated, untamed,
Yeah.
wild women. That's the whole archetype around the book.
Yes. And it really motivated it out of that book, a lot of people started creating,
Yes.
building, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it was true. Yeah, man, that book is very transformative. I can't even believe we're talking about it right now. That's okay. Yeah, it definitely took the theme for sure.
Oh yeah, it's super transformative. It speaks in myth, which is the language of our subconscious, the language of our soul, of our psyche. And the moment we're able to understand the myth that the book itself is sharing, that's when it changes our soul. That's when it changes our subconscious. And at every single time, even with the group that I had that was super tiny and the group that y'all had that was bigger, like there's always going to be someone that's going to understand some sort of the story and be able to at least start a conversation that's going to help everybody in the conversation understand the myth, understand the archetype, understand how that applies to you and how that can transform your life.
Yeah.
And yes, you're right. I have yet to meet someone that hasn't read that book that isn't at least following what they're truly passionate about or working towards it.
Yeah, and how beautiful, right? It's a mythology, right? So she's teaching you how to interpret a story. And then moving into anatomy of the spirit, she's also telling you to live a spiritual life, you got to see things symbolically. So we're already figuring out how to see things symbolically in Women Run with the Wolves. We jump into anatomy of the spirit. Now we're like looking, we already have our eyes wide open. We're already looking symbolically. Like it was just digging more into that. So then going into soul level, then spirit, then a spiritual level. So it's like, and now we're going into the body. So I'm excited. I'm excited for our journey.
Yeah, like so you talked about the spirit, you talked about the anatomy of the chakras and the anatomy of the body. Do you know what you have next coming up for your?
We are, like I was saying, we're going to be moving into the body. So we did what's the book?
The Body's Not an Apology.
The Body's Not an Apology. I wish I had the authors.
I thought about bringing the book with me too.
Renee or something, Sonia something. Okay, so The Body's Not an Apology. We have another one, Come As You Are, which is the science of female sexuality. That's Emily Nagoski.
Yes, we found her was because of the docuseries that they did on Netflix. It was called Principles of Pleasure. If you haven't seen it, you should. Oh, you've seen it?
Yes.
Isn't it so good? It was like I was learning so much stuff, like just information, just in general, of how much we actually did not know about the female anatomy. Shocking, amazing, yeah. It was really good. So she's the therapist, right? The therapist that constantly talks, that has the blue hair.
Yeah.
You remember that she has the short blue hair? She wrote a book, and it's called.
Oh, it came back to me. Yes.
Yes. So anyway, so she wrote a book, and that's the one that she's talking about.
So we have that one, and then also I'm reading Tantric Orgasm for Women by Denise something. Okay, we gotta be better at this. We gotta be better at the authors.
The names.
All right.
Yes. Next time we're gonna have a whole list.
Yeah.
It's a couple books. And then I'm reading, but that one's gonna be for further.
That's gonna be another one,
that's
another season. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna have to stop that one. I'm gonna have to read these so I can chit chat with her about them. But yeah, The Body's Not an Apology is the next one. But it's fun. So that's what we're doing different this time. So what we've done before is that we've had the book club pick the book, like collectively. But given, just moving forward, just trying to change things up and what would work best for the podcast, we thought that it would be nice to just kind of keep in theme also an interest in what we want to read as well. So it's not like the group isn't interested in it, but we're no longer like, we're kind of just like the podcast is leading now the book choices. Where before book club used to lead the book choices.
Exactly. But being that we are doing the grunt of the work because not everybody reads all the time.
Capricorn. You hear the Capricorn? You hear the Capricorn?
So,
Yeah.
Why are we having a whole community vote for a book and then I gotta talk about it and I gotta be all in? No, screw that shit. We're gonna focus on what we want to read, what we want to talk about. Whoever wants to come and join on board, they can join us.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, y'all have to pick the books because you are definitely gonna have to read them. Because when I showed up to the meeting, I didn't really read the book, and I just want to go and sit and just listen and just chime in the conversation, even though I'm not gonna bring anything about the book. But
well, we're also changing the dynamic of get-togethers now.
Well, I was gonna say there
Yeah.
was one of our rules for book club was, look, you don't have to read the book. Just show up, all right? We're gonna help you. We're gonna guide you through it. We just want you to be there to capture the information and also give us your input. You know, like what do you think? What have you been through? Because our stories are our medicine. So what's your medicine for me? And I'll give you the medicine, you know, what's my medicine for you? But now, like she was saying,
I think the book, it started off as book club and it created a community. But people sometimes limit themselves, even though we've told them over and over, you don't have to read the book, just come. Because honestly, the conversation does take over and it does end up being a very healing time. And you were there, you didn't read the book, but you still got something out of it. We got something, out of what you brought, which was beautiful. I loved it. And so we want to take out that kind of like, I guess it was never a requirement, but I think it was stopping people. So whenever we did events like the vision board, more people showed up because there was no need to have to read or catch up on something, and people were bogged down with a lot of stuff. So I think moving forward, we're just going to be doing monthly meetups, a Brava meetup throughout Orlando. So whoever's local, wants to hang out with us, we can just come together. And there's not going to be any like specific format. It's more going to be kind of like just honestly a monthly meetup with women, with sisters,
just a hangout.
Just a hangout. Bring food. We can journal together. We can meditate together. We can just lay out under a tree and just enjoy the day, spend some time together, spend a couple hours of it's just that time alone. I think as women, we naturally just tend to start talking. And before you know it, these two are over here crying and talking about something. These two never knew that they had this in common. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful when everybody comes together.
And it's healing. It's so nice and healing. Like there's so many women that say that, oh, I have no friends that are women, or like I can't like have a good friend that's a woman. And it's just like, well, maybe you should start putting yourself out there, be a little bit out of your comfort zone and just go to like these women's circles, which is pretty much what you're doing. You're building a sisterhood, you're building a community around reading books, which is going to expand your mind and expand your vibes. So
oh, excuse me, that's a tagline right there.
Yes.
that's the writer in me.
I was gonna say that. You need to write that down.
Yes, let me know if you need any marketing tips. I got
No,
you.
mija, ya. Okay, tú tienes la labia, la labia.
La labia. I'm like, la labia. Let me,
Yeah.
for those of you listening to this on Spotify, you might want to go to this specific time and see me just blah, 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 anyways.
Yeah, it was a little hot, I'm not gonna lie.
Pull out the titty stickers. What are they called? I don't even know what they're called.
The nipple tassels.
Yes. Yes, the nipple tassels. Oh my God, that's funny. So I also want to bring up the fact that you have usually in-person meetups, but with Anatomy of the Spirit, y'all started to try to incorporate a couple of virtual meetups as well, just to make it more accessible. And I'm super excited that you're bringing up on here that you're building a Patreon or wanting to build a Patreon, which is going to help create that online community as well as that in-person community, and it just expand overall. So I don't know if you want to share anything else about just continue to build community online, in person, and just all that.
I think right now we are heavy in the creative stage. Really, really heavy. And I think we're finally getting a flow. And starting the podcast from the community and like where Dalma's seen it from the very start, and what it was at first was just like friend hangout, and they would do all the she didn't go into detail about it, but in the beginning when they would get together, they would do all types of elaborate things. Like when they would come together, they would pick themes and how they would dress and how they would prepare. So it already from the inception of it all was always going to be something, and it's really evolved to this. And right now we're just creating a lot. We're starting to be more strategic in how we are tackling social media. Now with the podcast, like finishing season 1, what did that look like? Are we going to continue just always recording, or are we going to do like seasons? Building all of that, creating, we're friends. And if you saw our reel from the other day, we're also distant cousins. So we have a lot of layers to our relationship, but this has been a brand new one, which is figuring out how to work together in partnership and creating together, and what complements each other and what does not. And I think it's funny that we're even naturally the conversation just kind of keeps coming back to this because this is where we're at right now. Right now, we are in like strategic mode of like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Okay, so if we're going to talk about this book, it's really at the forefront of it all right now. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's like a lot of ideas. It's kind of like that thing where you throw it up in the air and see what lands, see what sticks. So
Yeah.
I think that that's what we have a vision, we have a strategy, like she said. Now it's all about implementation and also like just really like ironing out those little details.
And then the discipline, because before we were kind of doing everything on a whim. Now, thanks Timmy, like Nisi Nash says, when she was like, and also I like to think of myself.
You know that Norelly, if you don't listen to the podcast, you know she's always gonna give herself props at least one time.
Baby, because ain't nobody gonna love you like you do. Okay? Nobody. But you know, that's why you brought me in anyways to bring, and you know, when I first started with Dalma, you know, I was going through so much shit. I'm still going through so much shit, but we're resilient, right? We're getting it together. We're pulling it together. And so I think that was the hardest thing was when you're doing a partnership with a family member or a friend or somebody they're very close to, you naturally have to create some boundaries on certain things. Like sometimes we'll talk about it, we're like, we're not talking about Brava tonight. We're going out. Like we're gonna have fun. Like I'm sorry. She keeps me in check too. I'm sorry. So I'm always making 20 million sounds. So yeah, so we created some boundaries like that. Like if we're gonna go out, we're gonna spend some time. When is it time to us just to sit down and talk? And then other times to just work, you know? So finding that we have now our weekly meetings. Now we are creating our content calendar. You know, we've got all these plans. We're putting a strategy together. Like actually, we have documents. We have like a tracker for our show. Like we have all these things that we didn't have before. We keep up with our meeting notes and our tasks and things and like what are our takeaways and we follow up and we're starting to hold each other accountable. I'm holding myself accountable and it's not perfect. We're still figuring it out. But you know, nobody sees all the work that goes on in the background. And that's why I'm very impressed that you do this and you manage your just your regular page, but also your business page. And so
And now you also have a podcast with your sister.
the podcast and you do all the I'm sure you do all the graphics and all that stuff too. And you have your full-time job. So it's a lot. It's you know, and we also have our jobs on top of that. And I'm a mom, which I think is also I love that mix between us because a lot of women's circles sometimes are either really like leaning towards like women who don't necessarily have children and then there's like women's circles that are just for moms, you know, or just more towards that. And in our world I feel like it's very mixed, and our community is very mixed. There's single moms, there's you know married moms, there's all types of different, you know, and also not moms, like women who've decided not to have children, or grandmothers we also have. So like we have such a mix.
Well, we also have a lot of different ages, right? We have anywhere from early 20s to like 40, 50-year olds in the group. So it's nice. It's a little bit of everything.
Which is the way it should be because that's how you learn, you know, and you want to also honor the knowledge, you know, that the elders have and also the knowledge that the youth brings in, you know, and then the ones that we're here right now in the middle, we're the, you know, the middle ages, I don't know, whatever, like we're just like everybody, that whole mix, it's such a cool dynamic, you know.
Yeah, I definitely love so many things that you said, and I'm like, let me pick one thing to like go off of, and then like we'll see how it goes. But I want to talk about the whole mothers and like not mothers in the group because I totally agree with you in that a lot of times, usually they're separate. So it's beautiful that you're able to bring them together in this community because I feel like a lot of people in general don't associate a mom figure and like a maiden figure. And what I mean by that is you can't you can't be you can't dress like a hoe and get married. Right? Like that's a very big misconception. If you suck someone's dick, you're not like married material. You're not wife material. If you're like fucking around and you're having a lot of sex and you're having fun, you wear like nice clothing that makes you feel good. It's not even for men. It makes you feel good, makes you feel sexy. All of a sudden, you're not wife material. You can't be a mother. Like it's not a good thing. And there's just this like weird divide between being a maiden, being in that maiden era where you want to go out, where you want your tits to like look really good, when you want to do your makeup, when you want to, you know, just have fun. And there's a different vibe of being a mother. But there's a lot of people that don't have children that are very motherly. And there's a lot of women that are mothers that are that J-Lo, you know? And I just like that this is also yet another layer that you're bringing into the healing space of like, we can all coexist. We're all women. We're all multidimensional. We all want to be a thought and we all want to take care of our children.
Yeah.
Girl, yes, exactly. That's where I would do the little song, yeah, and everybody's like, and applause. Yes.
And there's that one guy's like,
Yeah, there's always one that goes too hard. But I was gonna say, you know, even when we started, I had that como se that dilemma of like, okay, when we were gonna start talking about the sacral chakra, I've already talked about my daughter. I've talked about being a mom, you know, and then now I'm gonna talk about pussy. Like, like, am I allowed to say that word? You know, like it's like all those things. I really definitely feel like I've put myself out there in this experience specifically with the podcast and just even online, like with social media and the things that we're doing, because it took me when I became a mother, it took me a long time to find, and that happens to every woman. That's like every woman's journey is different. But I remember this one mom when I had my daughter wasn't even a year old yet, and her son was 8 years old. And she goes, it took me 4 years to find myself again. And I was like, okay. She's like, don't worry, you're gonna come back to yourself. You will, but you're gonna be different. It's gonna be. And so sure enough, like around 3, 4 years old, it's when I started kind of like getting back into my body. And my daughter's 5.5, you know? And so reclaiming all of that, and then through the tail end of Women Who Went with the Wolves and getting into Anatomy of the Spirit, I went through a huge metamorphosis, a huge, you know, I went through a dark night of the soul. I mean, it's spiritual growth and all of that, you know, my sexuality, tapping back into it and talking about it and accepting myself still as a sexual being that you know, I remember the first few times I started going out, my daughter as a baby, me stepping out, I didn't do it that often. But now she was older, she talks, she asks questions, and mommy's getting ready, and you know, my boobies are out, you know, I'm wearing a little crop top, you know, I'm dressing cute, you know, and so she would see me and she would ask me questions. And I remember how much mom guilt I would get in the beginning for that, because I would be like, you know, I never saw my mom like this, but I also wasn't exposed to it. So I don't know what that's supposed to look like, because that generation was a different generation. And I'm healing a lot of different things through my, you know, my mother womb. So it's been an experience. And then talking about it so openly, and the fact that we're in the same age and we're both having very different experiences, and like being able to still relate to each other, I think is the best part, because I think sometimes there's that separation, lack of empathy, sometimes from this side, right? Women who don't have children, and then also lack of empathy for women on this side with women who do have children. Like just coming together, relating, and still seeing each other's situations and decisions and respecting it and connecting, you know?
Yes, I love that. I want to definitely, there's two things that I want to talk about, and they kind of go hand in hand. And one of them is that it's amazing how reading a book, especially if it's intentional, can bring a space that can provide so much room to grow and evolve and be who you want to be who you are, spiritually or not. Like it doesn't have to be spiritual. It can be about finances. It can be about sex, which can be spiritual, but it's fun, right? Like it just brings a space by reading a book in community with other women to grow. And it's crazy to think about because you wouldn't obviously jump to let me read a book to grow. Like a lot of people don't think of that. They're like, let me go to a master class, let me spend $1,000 going to a retreat, let me spend X amount of money to do like a training and become like certified in something. It's like, no, bro, for $11, go to Barnes and Nobles, buy yourself a book that calls to you and read it, or go to Spotify, go to Audible, listen to it. So that's one thing that I want to talk about. And alongside that, I want to ask you both if you're able to let us know, let the listeners know, or just talk about what made you want to grow spiritually or just holistically as a person? Like, what made you want to do that, and how has that journey been for you?
Well, I always say I'm a forever student. I love learning, right? So I love like diving into a book. I read multiple books at the same time, depending on my mood and what I'm in, want to learn more about. And I think it's important to sit there with the book, right? Because it's like you're not going to digest it all in one sitting, or you can, but the beauty of the book is that you can keep coming back to it. You can highlight it. You can reflect on it. You can really sit with it. And I love reading. I love reading high. So forget it. I'm there for hours. And you're really gonna start like pontificating, okay?
Low-key, I'm about to try that next time. I did not think of that.
Yes.
It's very relaxing.
I feel like it was like part of my spiritual practice. I would smoke a joint, sit outside on the porch, be out there with nature, sage a little bit, and then start reading, right? Because I'm going into it with so much intention. And going into it with a lot of intention, you get like there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of downloads that come in, things that you didn't think that maybe you would think about or be able to process and understand. You are, because there's something greater at play that's helping you along. Um, and we're both pastor's daughter. We grew up in church, and this has been an interesting journey, right? Because we don't practice the same things, and our views have expanded beyond what we were raised to believe. So I have just always been on the pursuit of tapping in, like being part of whatever this all is.
Yeah, I same. I think the foundation of us, growing up in church definitely kind of set the tone for us. And so even though same as her, right, we both went through our experiences differently and how we decided to kind of leave that set of belief and lifestyle um when we parted like from the church and stuff, but we never stopped being in pursuit of connecting with a spiritual source, and understanding what that meant for us. And so for me, I've always been on a journey for sure. Even, I left home and then I moved out of Florida. And when I left, I remember, that was such a big thing for me. Everywhere I've gone, I've moved around a lot. I've lived in a lot of different places, but I would always look for a source of like, okay, am I, I was questioning all my belief systems of everything. Is it church? Is it this? Do I want this type of church? Do I want that type of church? Is it this type of group? And for me, the first thing that started my spiritual kind of like lifestyle and really moving towards in this direction away from like Christianity was when I went to a yoga class. That was my first spiritual like awakening. And I remember going into that class and it was the owner of the yoga studio. And I think I talked about this in the podcast. But so in the yoga studio, my friend had invited me and I was like, you know what? I never did it because growing up Pentecostal, it was like seen as like a sin, or it was like, they believe in all these
A
other
demon
things.
can like jump into your body if you're meditating.
Yeah, like you're meditating, it was like a lot of fear, based tactics here. So for a long time that kind of just, there's certain stigmas that just stay in your mind. You don't question them and you just kind of go along. And then I remember that friend, she and I were very close, and she was like, girl, I've gotten into this class, it's so good. And, and I was like, all right, I'll go with you. And so I went, and something happened that she couldn't show up that day. And I ended up being there by myself. I was so mad because my introverted, I know people don't believe that I'm introverted, but my introverted self did not have her shield that was going to keep her safe, which was my friend. And I was already in the class. So I was like, I'm going to stay. So the owner came that day and he started out the class with just talking about like a reflection. So I felt like I was in church. And so he started talking about it, and he was talking about the reflection and the lesson that he learned. Then he went into a meditation, and then we started our yoga flow. So I had never been to a yoga class, which moving forward, I always thought that was like the norm. And then I learned it wasn't. But honestly, it should be because it's church. It's straight up as church. So
This is
anyway,
what book club ended up being. It was like going to church.
yeah, that's what we always say. 100% book club always feels like going to church. So anyway, so yeah, so he started it. And in the midst of that meditation, I started crying. And I started feeling what I would feel in church, which was when we would say that we felt the Holy Ghost. I felt it. I felt it when I was in that class. And that for me was like mind shattering, because in that moment I understood something extremely vital that I would never have known, which was that experience, that feeling of feeling the Holy Ghost wasn't the Holy Ghost. It's like it could either be spirit, it could be source, or it could be the collective power of the energy of everyone in that room. Because when you're in church, when you're in that worship mode, everyone is in that meditative state. Everyone's humming, everyone's singing the same words. It's mantra. It's all of that.
Chanting.
It's chanting. So getting everybody aligned. When you go to a concert, you feel that excitement in the concert and you're like, oh my God, it was amazing. Da, 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 da.
Oh, what's that Bad Bunny concert? We were like, I feel like I'm at a youth service right now. Like everybody was just,
and even though it was like, we're shaking our asses and it's like, but I felt like, tears could be coming out. There was so much love. The energy was so high. So I understood in that moment that what I felt in church, I could feel in all these other different spaces. If I just expand my mind, understanding that that wasn't tied just to that. So from there on, girl, my experience changed forever. And so it's just been, I think naturally, like everybody, it's my spiritual growth, both of ours has been like in spurts, right? We've gone through certain years that have been harder than others, and then the harder years is where you get more enlightenment and all that stuff. Also, I want to put out there that I'm a Taurus, and if you know anything about astrology, I've been through it, girl. I've been through it. Also, my moon is Taurus too, so it's been that, and also my rising. So it's been a lot.
I'm laughing because like we had the class together, so like I know your chart, and I'm just like,
you know my chart. That's true, Ashley. You know my chart, so you know what I've been through, girl.
yeah. Oh my God, this is hilarious.
Going back to what you're saying, that for you it was being able to experience the same thing that you experienced in church in other settings. For me, it wasn't about the experience. For me, it was all the information I'm taking in, because reading other texts, reading other books, it was like, oh, that's like this part in the Bible. Like how anatomy talks. There's eternal truth. There's always going to be an eternal truth to something. It's just dressed up differently. It's called different words. It's in a different context, but it's all generally the same. And when I started reading and really like diving deep into other religions and things like that, that's when I was like, okay, I've been looking down this one hallway and it just made me like knock down so many walls where it was like, whoa, like this, I can like feel is like a little grain. I don't know beyond that, and to think otherwise is just foolish.
I love that. This is how we complement each other so well, because your expansion came through knowledge. My expansion came through feeling.
Which is what I struggle with. And I feel like
I always need the knowledge piece.
And I wanted to say earlier, which I'm glad that you guys talked about the spiritual growth, because I also wanted to say earlier with the I Am BRAVA community and its growth. Sometimes some people forget that things have a life and things have an evolution. If we see a baby, we know it's going to go through its toddler years, through its childhood, it's going to hit puberty, and it's going to be a little funky and wonky. Then it's going to become a teenager, and it's going to try to figure out, oh my God, what do I like? What do I care about? Who are the men that I fell in love with? And then all of a sudden, like adulthood's going to hit you in the face. You're like, oh my God, that means nothing. Let me like figure out myself. And then you're going to hit your solar return or your Saturn return or all the returns. And then you're going to be like, oh my God. But it's like, like you go through a puberty in your spiritual growth. You go through a puberty when you're building a business, when you're building a community like this. And I Am BRAVA, like, it's such a beautiful space, and it's so abundant, and it's so fulfilling, and it's so successful in so many ways. And yet you're expanding, you're hitting puberty, your boobs are growing, there's like hair coming out your armpits now.
But you got something. It's nice.
Yes, which is
pretty nipples at least.
She does.
Which is why you need the nipple tassels.
I have them.
She does.
For only $25.99. No.
She sells them on her
to the Topless Podcast episode.
If you hop onto her topless podcast episode for $25.99, you'll also be receiving a shipment of nipple stickers.
Nipple stickers, yeah, I love that. Nipple stickers. It's your free gift.
Merchandising.
It's gonna say "I am Brava," like on two
Yes.
different. And then people can actually wear that outside because it's like "I am Brava" for you, but "I am Brava" just period because you're, anyways.
That's a campaign right there. Look, see, it's creating.
Yes, creating. So we've had spiritual growth, we've had intellectual growth, we've had bodily growth, feeling growth. We have all types of growth. So with that being said, if people want to learn more about you, more about y'all's community and get in touch with it, go to events, listen to your podcast, or listen to any book club meetings that you're having coming up, where can people find you so they can jump in on your growth wagon?
Yes. Well, immediately now, since we don't have our Patreon page just set up just yet, but we'll give you the information so that you can put it in your show notes and people can click on the link. But follow us on Instagram, I.am.brava, BRAVA. And the link is there to follow the podcast, to
Season 1's out.
yeah, all of season 1 is out. To join the book club app if you want to do any local meetups. And then we'll have our Patreon link in there as well. And we have TikTok.
And we have TikTok. We're not 100% active yet there, but we have
we have some there. It's the Brava podcast.
The Brava podcast.
It's the handle.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
but IG is the main space right now for sure where we're moving through.
We're millennials.
We're millennials. We're gonna have an IG page. So we've been doing a lot of reels lately.
Perfect. So I'll have all of that in the show notes for those of you that want to follow it up. And also tune in about a week where your second season of the podcast is going to be airing.
Yes. We wanted to do it intentionally on the week of the spring equinox. It's a new season in, yearly, and it is
It's the actual new year.
Yeah, and it is a new season of our podcast. Yeah. So what better way to start off spring than to diving into all matters of the body and sexuality?
In there, baby. Ashley, thank you so much for this opportunity. This was really fun. Yeah. And it was our first interview. You took our virginity away. Our interview virginity away.
I would like to get paid with nipple stickers, please.
Done.
We owe you
done
nipple stickers. Got it. Yes.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you for listening and thank you for being here. Until next time.
Yay.
That was such a great episode. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Definitely look at the show notes here for you to connect with the Brava community if you're in Orlando, Florida. And I hope that this conversation made you think about how community shows up for you in your life, how sisterhood shows up for you in your life, and what is it that you might want to change? What is it that you want to keep, in your life? And either way, whatever that looks like for you, I hope that this gave you a good, beautiful idea as to how powerful community and sisterhood can truly, truly be. So thank you for listening. Until next time, guys.